All right, everybody. Day number 2 of NFL free agency is in the books. I've decided to go ahead and put it to bed with the announcement just moments ago of David Andrews returning to the Patriots. So if anything big happens after then, I'll cover it tomorrow morning or something. But let's go ahead and talk about what the Seahawks did today, because I know there were some mixed thoughts on what happened with Seattle today. And I think that a lot of people are going to be wondering what I think. I already gave my thoughts on stream, more or less. I gave some of my thoughts in the quick videos I posted throughout the day, but let's dive a little deeper into the two retainings that we did today, if you will. The two players we brought back from 2020. And let's talk about why they were brought back, what kind of role they might have in 2021, and how to look at these signings in a constructive and productive way. Because I know for a fact that the second of our signings today irritated a lot of people. So first, we've just hit 2,660 subscribers. Shout out to all the subscribers. We got a bunch of new ones since yesterday. Thank you, everybody who's joined the channel in the last day. Thank you, everyone who's joined the channel, period. And let's take a look here. So first thing we're going to take a look at is Nick Bellore, the fullback slash special teamer who's now been with the team 2 years going on 3. He was brought back on a 2-year deal, and first thing I'm going to say is there's not much I can do to defend this. Nick Bellore's 2-year deal with the Seahawks is worth $4.45 million with $1.2 million guaranteed. So I believe his cap hit the first year is going to be $1.75 million, and then the rest of it's going to be in the second year. So that's a little surprising to me. I was not expecting this 2-year deal to be more than $3 million. I could have seen maybe 3.5. This threw me for a loop, and I know we're kind of, it's not a big deal. It's not even $1 million. It's peanuts as far as NFL salaries go, but this kind of threw me for a loop. That being said, I'm not going to grandstand over what amounts to about 0.5% of the salary cap in 2021. So, Nick Bellore. First, let's get the obvious stuff out of the way. When you're evaluating Nick Bellore, you can't use anything that happens on offense. If you take a look at his numbers in Seattle over the last 2 years, he has a grand total of 3 catches for 31 yards and 3 catches, 31 yards, and 1 carry for 5 yards. So that's clearly not how he adds value to this team. If you go down to his snap counts, it's not by being on the field on offense either, because you will see that he has been on the field on offense for a grand total of 64 snaps over the last 2 seasons. That is about 2 snaps a game, because he's only played in 30 games. So, yeah, offensively is not where Nick Bellore adds to this team. We can very clearly see that. Where he does add value over the last 2 years is as a special teamer. You can see he's played 560 snaps on special teams over the last 2 years, and he's been on the field for over 60% of our special teams plays over that period. So before we dive into why he adds value there, let's quickly dismiss the possibility of Nick Bellore becoming a bigger part of the offense. So I took a look at some personnel grouping frequency charts over the last 3 years, like this one you can find on sharpfootballstats.com, and I crunched the numbers down over the last 3 years to take a look at the Rams offense and how they used their fullback, if at all. So we're going to start with the most recent season, 2020, and we're going to take a look at every time the Rams lined up with 2 running backs in their backfield. Well, 2 backs in their backfield. 2 running back, 1 tight end, 2 receiver. The league averaged this formation on 7% of their snaps, over 2,500 snaps total league-wide. The Rams did it 0 times. 0% of their snaps, 0 snaps period, were used on this formation. The only other team that didn't use this formation once all season was Tampa Bay. The 2 back, 2 tight end, 1 receiver formation was used by the league 4% of the time. The Rams actually did use this formation on 3 occasions, not even 1%, not even rounding up to 1%, rounding down to 0%. They used it almost as little as anybody else. There was like one team that used it 2 times, and there were a couple other teams that used it 3 times as well. So, yeah, Rams did not use 2 running backs in this formation very often. 2 backs, 0 tight ends, 3 receivers. The league average 1%, 281 snaps. Rams 0%, 0 snaps. Same as I think 6 or 7 other teams that didn't use this formation at all. And finally, 2 backs, 3 tight ends, 0 receivers. League average 0%, 75 snaps total. So each team used it an average of, 3 times over the course of the whole season. And the Rams used it, you guessed it, 0% of the time. They were one of, I think, 18 teams that did not use this formation once. So overall, the league average for snaps with with 2, specifically 2 backs in the backfield, was 12.3. So about 1 out of every 8 snaps was taken with 2 backs in the backfield, over 4,100 snaps. The Rams used 2 backs on 0.2% of their snaps, 3 snaps total. So yeah, the Rams, with Shane Waldron being part of the offense they were running, did not use the fullback at all, really. I'd like to hear the story behind why they used them for 3 snaps, honestly, because something tells me that it's not part of their offense at all. I wonder what caused them to have 2 backs on the field at any point. 2019, I'm not going to do all the numbers here, but suffice to say, 2019, the Rams did not run a single snap with 2 backs in the backfield. And in 2018, which was Shane Waldron's first year as the passing game coordinator, they actually did it 9 times, which amounted to 0.7% of the snaps. So over 3 years, with Shane Waldron as a passing game coordinator, the Rams used 2 backs in the backfield on a grand total of 12 snaps, amounting to less than half of a percent of their total offensive snaps. So yeah, they don't use fullbacks, and it's very unlikely that Shane Waldron will be using a fullback. So there's nothing here where we start talking about how, Nick Bellore is going to suddenly become a frequently used fullback like Kyle Juszczyk. That's very unlikely to happen. So why we did this is pretty simple. If we go to footballoutsiders.com and take a look at their special teams ratings for 2020, we can't see all the ratings because we are not elite privileged members, but we can see that the Seattle Seahawks ranked number 3 in the NFL in their special teams DVOA. Now, the reasons why this can be obvious. We had an elite punter who had one of the best seasons by any punter ever, and we had an elite kicker who had a career year and one of the best seasons any kicker has ever had. But a part of having a good special teams DVOA is how you cover punts and returns. And you may remember that the Seahawks did not exactly have a very good season returning kicks and punts. So our coverage must have been very good. And if you look at our scores in these regards, they are quite solid, and they stack up well with the best special teams units in the league. So last year, the Seahawks were elite on special teams. Only New England and Baltimore, both teams, by the way, that have former special team gurus as head coach, Bill Belichick and John Harbaugh, we were right there with them. So the special teams was good. And if you take a look at special teams tackles made in 2020, you can see that there are actually 2 Seahawks in the top 4, which is pretty remarkable. You won't see other teams have things like that very often. We have Cody Barton, who was 2nd in the league in special teams tackles with more than 1 a game, 17. And then Nick Bellore was right behind him, 14 special teams tackles across 16 games, so just under 1 a game. The only other Seahawk on this list was Ryan Neal, who has 8. So clearly, Nick Bellore was a big part of a special teams coverage unit that was very, very good. Maybe not the most important part of it. That would probably be Barton, just going by the tackle count. And I believe Barton also forced 1 fumble, which Bellore cannot say for 2020. But yeah, Bellore's a very important part of a very good special teams unit. So you could say that that special teams play maybe is why he earned the $4.5 million over 2 years. I'm still a little surprised by that price, especially given the fact that our new offense is very unlikely to use fullbacks at all. But that's kind of interesting. So process that how you will, but let it be known that Nick Bellore adds a lot of value to this special teams unit. So the next move we made was re-signing Ethan Pocic to a 1-year deal worth $3 million. And a lot of people didn't like this. They really wanted an upgrade at center. They wanted to do something else at center. And when Pocic got signed, they were unhappy. So I can understand this. Pocic was far from my first choice. Far from it. I wanted to go get a Pro Bowler. I wanted to go get a blue chipper. I wanted to go get a veteran who had been great for a long time. There are still opportunities to do that, but for a moment, let's forget that. Let's assume for a minute that Ethan Pocic's going to be the starter in 2021. What can we say about that? All right, let's take a look at Pocic's PFF page. And you guys know how I feel about Pro Football Focus, but Pro Football Focus does accumulate some objective stats that are useful. So Pocic in 2020 played 932 snaps and had 1 penalty, and he allowed 2 sacks. And according to people I know who have access to more advanced and granular metrics, he allowed something like 3 or 4 quarterback hits and about 20 QB pressures. Keep in mind that he's blocking for Russell Wilson, who is known as being a quarterback who holds onto the ball as long as anybody, and for a decent chunk of last year was quite simply taking too many sacks and too many hits. And while some of those will get accredited to Pocic, we know that Wilson needs to get rid of the ball a little faster if he wants to play effective QB in the NFL. So that doesn't sound that bad, does it? 2 sacks allowed in 14 starts, 1 penalty in 14 starts. That doesn't sound that bad. Let's take a look at some of the guys who, going through day number 2 of free agency, myself and others wanted to sign. Let's take a look at David Andrews, who was available until about 15 minutes ago. David Andrews played over 700 snaps, had 1 penalty, and allowed 2 sacks. Where have I seen those numbers before? Okay, so very similar. On a per snap basis, it's actually a little less impressive. Okay. Austin Blythe, a guy who I still would not hate bringing in. Over 1,100 snaps played for the Rams last year, 1 penalty committed, and 4 sacks allowed. Wow, that's actually quite a few for a center. 4 sacks allowed in, I think he played all 16 games. He must have to play this many snaps. Yeah. Okay, that's something to keep in mind. And let's even take a look at Rodney Hudson, who a lot of Seahawks fans wanted to trade for. It fell through quickly, but let's take a look at Rodney Hudson just for fun, because he was kind of the white whale that a lot of Seahawks fans were really chasing after. Almost 1,100 snaps, 1 penalty, and 1 sack allowed. Not really all that different in terms of the raw, basic stats, right? And I seriously doubt any of these centers allowed less QB hits than 3 or 4, which is supposedly what Pocic allowed. So, that being said, why is it that Posic's PFF grade was 62.5, whereas David Andrews' was 67, almost 68, Austin Blythe's was 69, going on 70, and Rodney Hudson's was 73, almost 74? Logic dictates it's probably run blocking, right? It's probably the run blocking that was the issue for Pocic, and it was an area where Blythe, Andrews, and Hudson were better in, right? And watching Pocic and knowing about his game, it kind of makes sense. Pocic is not a guy who's good at winning one-on-one battles. He's not good at being a guy who is told, okay, there's your defensive tackle in front of you, block him, don't let him get to Wilson, or open up a hole, push him to the side. That's not really Posic's game. Posic's game is better just working within like a blocking scheme. So what kind of rushing attack is Shane Waldron probably trying to build? Probably an outside running scheme, right? Because we lost Chris Carson, or we're probably about to lose Chris Carson. Rashad Penny's probably going to be the number 1 back in 2021, and we know he's an outside runner, a vision runner, somebody who likes to look for the hole and then hit the hole. So, is it possible that a center who is a little weak and can't win one-on-one battles won't matter as much in a outside running scheme, and it mattered far more when we had an inside running scheme like with Chris Carson where he just wanted to pound it up the middle. That kind of sounds like it makes sense to me. So Ethan Pocic's run blocking ability in this new Shane Waldron offense should have more to do with his mobility and agility than it does his ability to just run into somebody and push them to the side. I decided to do one more thing in researching Ethan Pocic versus other centers that we maybe could have gotten. And again, I want to stress, bringing in Austin Blythe to compete for the starting job would be awesome. Bringing in a second-round rookie to compete for the starting job would be awesome. I'm not discounting any of that. But working from the perspective of Pocic is going to start, let's take a look at something here real quick. If you go to the Wikipedia page for the 40-yard dash, they list the average 40 time speed for each position over 12 years of the combine. Now, this data is a little old. It's from 2000 to 2012. But we can get some idea of how fast these players typically are. Now, the speeds have probably come down a tiny bit just because players are in better shape and they're more athletic than ever. But if you take a look down here, the average center 40 time is 5.3 seconds. 5.3 seconds. So let's take a look at Rodney Hudson. 40 time. 5.27. That was presumably at the combine. Excuse me. Probably now, as a veteran, he's a little slower than that. So he's pretty much average as far as centers go in terms of speed. 5.27 40 time. Austin Blythe. Wow, he's actually got a little below average 40 time. 5.36, almost 5.4. Okay, maybe that's what makes Shane Waldron not as interested in these players because they're a little slower. Now, David Andrews doesn't have his 40 time listed, but if you take a look at Pocic, 5.15. Not only is that noticeably faster than the other two guys I just looked at, it's probably one of the fastest 40 times for any center in the NFL. 5.15 is pretty good for any offensive lineman, but for a center, it's well above average. I'd be interested to see who the fastest centers in the league are, but Pocic is probably up there with a 40 time like this. So maybe when Shane Waldron looks at Ethan Pocic, he sees a player who is not necessarily great, but maybe he's a great fit for what Waldron wants to do. And in his mind, he's thinking he's a really good really good pass blocker, which, based off what we saw last year, he seems like he is. 2 sacks allowed over the course of 14 games. That seems entirely manageable to me. And remember, he played half those games suffering the after effects of a concussion. May have affected his game. And he's thinking, well, he's not the best run blocker, but I think I can scheme him into situations where he can be the most effective, where he's on the move and using his agility. And it seems like Pocic has a little more agility and speed than the average center. So maybe that's the thought process here. Again, I do really expect us to build our rushing attack as one that focuses on running to the outside. And it seems to me at least very possible that Pocic excels in such a system. So that's my optimistic take on the Ethan Pocic signing. By no means do I think we are done at center. Drafting a center would be great. Bringing in another veteran center would be great as well. But that's how I see it. So I'm going to go and get out of here. Those are my thoughts on our 2 moves today. The only other thing that happened of real significance to us was that David Moore is a Panther, which I already kind of commented on. But he was a cool player, but he can be replaced. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. I'll do something tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'm going to stream all day. I don't think I'll be able to. But if we do something, I will obviously make content, and we might stream at night to talk about it. But that's going to do it for me. See y'all tomorrow.